Hi everybody. Today I want to talk a little bit about predictive research. Basically what we're talking about here is correlational studies. So if you get data from a survey or if you just gather information from, it'd be kind of hard to do with observation, but you could do with observation, with naturalistic observation or with multiple case studies, then you can apply either descriptive statistics, and that would give you descriptions of the data set like frequency or mean, median, mode, all those kinds of things. But if you move one step further, you have predictive research, and that's correlational research. And basically what you do here, the purpose is to determine if there's a relationship between two or more variables. So that's what correlation does for you. For our purposes of Psych 101, we're just going to talk about the numbers that you get and what they mean. Kind of like if you want to know more about descriptive statistics, look in Appendix 1. But what we would do is basically, for predictive research, is put our information into the computer program and come up with what we call a correlation coefficient. So this is the number that tells you how closely related the variables are. And again, for our purposes, we'll just deal with two variables. It's much easier that way. When you get the correlation coefficient, you're going to get three pieces of information that are very important. First of all, the correlation coefficient has to be between -1 and +1. If you get a correlation coefficient that is outside of that range, so if you read a study and it said Dr. Garcia got a correlation coefficient of -1.2, you would say, no, she didn't. That's impossible. There's no such thing as a correlation coefficient of -1.2. It's outside of the range. So on a test question about correlation, if it says which of the following correlation coefficients, and it says between negative and positive, and the number is outside of the negative and +1, like a 2.3, then you know that it's the researcher made a mistake. So correlation coefficients, based on the formula, you cannot get a correlation coefficient that is smaller than -1 or bigger than +1. Second thing, the correlation coefficient that we know about it is the number tells us about the strength of the relationship. If a correlation coefficient is 0, that means no relationship. So in the center with the 0, no relationship. And if the correlation coefficient, as it moves away from 0, and I'm trying to get into the camera so you could see me a little bit, as it moves away from 0, in either direction, either up or down, there, that's better. So here's 0. As it moves away from 0 in either direction, it's getting stronger. 0 is nothing. Everything that moves away from it is stronger, and it can only go, of course, to negative and +1. So you can't move beyond that. So this is where you're dealing with the number and not the positive negative yet. So the strength is just dealing with the number. The number, if you remove the positive negative, look at the absolute number. The absolute number that is closest to 1 without going over is the strongest. And the absolute number, no pluses and minuses, that is closest to 0 without going over is the weakest of the correlation coefficients. So if you had a correlation coefficient, if you were picking the strongest correlation coefficient, if I gave you a positive 0.6 and a negative 0.9 and a 0, and I asked you which is the strongest, it would be the negative point, whatever I said, because that was the highest number. It was closest to 1 without going over. So I'll do a few sample questions. I'll do another video with a few sample questions on it, see if we can get them right. So strength is the number without looking at the positive negative. The one closest to 1 without going over is the strongest relationship, or gives you the most predictive accuracy. The one closest to 0 is the weakest relationship, gives you the least predictive accuracy. Then you're probably wondering, well, why in the world do we have the positive and negative? The positive and negative shows you the direction of the relationship. So if you think about in math, if you have a positive correlation coefficient, the numbers are moving up together or down together. So remember, it doesn't have to be always going up like you would oftentimes think, but it can be going down. So it sounds odd, but if you use your thumbs, it will really help you on this. If the numbers are moving in the same direction, then you have a positive correlation coefficient. If the numbers are moving in opposite directions, so as one goes down, the other goes up, it doesn't matter which, as long as they're moving in opposite directions, then you have a negative correlation coefficient. The advantages of the correlational studies is it allows you to predict one variable from the other. It allows you to show relationship between variables, so you're showing whether or not two things are related. And you're getting predictive accuracy, potentially. The disadvantage, obviously, you could see the giant thing here. No cause and effect with correlation coefficients. It does not give you a cause and effect or a causation. It is only showing relationship, and two things can be related for a variety of different reasons. So it's not always cause and effect. So, for example, if you take violent video games and aggression in children, there is a positive correlation. The more time a child spends playing violent video games, the more aggressive the child tends to be. It's not a perfect relationship at all, but there is a slight positive correlation. So can we say violent video games are causing children to behave aggressively? No, we can't. Maybe aggressive children are drawn towards aggressive video games. So that's the ones they choose rather than the non-aggressive video games. Maybe there's some third factor that's causing the whole thing. Maybe it is related to violent home environment. And violent home environment is what is creating the relationship between the two. Or, a variety of other things. So please read carefully in the text about the cause and effect. And this is not the way we can get it. And again, I'll put up a few example questions and see how you do on those.